the Green Ember works for Christian families, particularly because the kids just love it as a story, and they're just like, this bow, this guy made this awesome shot with a bow, and they killed the bad guy here, and they won this, or they fought, and it's just adventure. And then the parents, I think, are resonating deeply with this sort of epic undertone that I think echoes reality with a capital R in a way that they are longing for.
Welcome to the Strategic Families Podcast, where we challenge your family to be rooted in God's Word, energized with gospel-centered purpose, and activated on mission for His kingdom. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Strategic Families Podcast. I hope everyone is doing great. So today we have two special guests, Sam and Josiah Smith. And if the name Sam Smith doesn't ring a bell, maybe SD Smith will. He is the author of the wildly popular Green Ember series of fantasy books for young readers. And these are the rabbits with swords, if you know what I mean. My kids love these books, so this is really a treat to get to know the author behind such a successful endeavor. Putting your kids in front of these books, I would say, is a strategic thing to do. And what's cool in this interview is that we also have his son, Josiah, with us as well, an impressive young man. How cool is it that he gets to be published while still in high school? Chip off the old block, it looks to me. So in this interview, we talk about their books, and we get to hear Sam's philosophy on storytelling. We also get to hear about how the Smith family home operates, which sounds amazing and so honoring to the Lord. Sam's just got so many nuggets of wisdom to share in this interview, the kind of nuggets that come only from being a disciple of Christ. All right, so friendly reminder, wherever you get podcasts, it would be fantastic if you could hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. And if this podcast has been a blessing for your family and you want to help support us, check out our show notes for a link to our Patreon page. All right, on to the show. Well, Sam and Josiah Smith, welcome to the podcast.
We are delighted to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. So glad to have you guys on. What a treat this is. Thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion. Okay, so before we get into some of the meat of what we're going to talk about today, can you guys just introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us who you are, what you do for a living, and of course, all about your family?
Sure. I'm Sam Smith. My wife is Gina, and we have 4 kids. We live in southern West Virginia. I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and one of my boys is this young man, Josiah Caleb.
So I'm Josiah, I'm Sam's son, and I also live in West Virginia with my dad, who's a famous author. And I'm just currently trying to graduate high school. That's my number one goal at the moment.
Perfect. That's a great goal to have, and I'm sure you will pass with flying colors. Yeah, like I said, this is really a treat. I love that you guys work together. We're going to get into all that in a little bit. So Sam, obviously many people will know you as SD Smith and recognize your name from the Green Ember series of books. And I got to say, like I think I told you, my kids love these books. We've had, kids acting out the characters and all kinds of stuff in our house. And your books just kind of went through our co-op and everybody's all excited about them, which is fantastic. So I would love for you to just share with us where the whole idea came from. I've read about this, but I'd love to hear it in your own words and to have you share it with our listeners.
Sure. It started not very far away from where we are right now. Our oldest daughter, and she's 19 now, but when she was just a little toddler, and she had a little baby brother named Josiah. She and I were on the porch, and I just used to tell her stories a lot. I would tell her stories at bedtime and different times throughout the day. And we had several little series going. We had one called Chance the Dog, and it was all about the dog who fought for other little animals who had this little coalition, and he would kind of protect them. And they went on this long journey to a farm. And I told her one about the girl with golden wings, and there was this whole story about with that. But one day we were on the porch, and there were rabbits hopping around in the yard. So I just started telling her a story about an older sister rabbit with a baby brother rabbit, or a younger brother rabbit, and that became the Green Ember over years. She really loved the story. I liked it, so we just kind of kept telling it. And eventually Josiah came along, and he joined us and told the story to both of them for many years. So I had kind of like a long time, a long rough draft, and eventually the kids were like, "Daddy, you got to tell this. You got to write this story down." So I wrote it down eventually, just sort of, without too much expectation other than this would be a memorial to this time we had together. And we decided to publish it, and my brother-in-law Andrew had been in publishing, and we talked about doing this for, we talked about starting a little press, and he was like, "This is a great story. I want to do it." And so okay, let's try it. And we tried it out, and it seemed to really resonate with other families pretty quickly, which is cool, because it was just kind of like, I don't know, exporting a product from home that was that was working at home, but we had no expectation of what it would do elsewhere. But it's been fun. It seems like there's a lot of other families like us who like these kinds of stories.
Oh man, that's fantastic. That's kind of like your grandmother's got this great barbecue sauce recipe or something, and then you end up like, hey, turns out lots of people like this recipe. So
that is exactly how I describe it, and it's exactly how it feels. I usually use the so it's like grandma's recipe, and a lot of it feels like we're having a lot of people over, and a lot of people are like, yeah, this is cool, and that's such a fun, because at the heart of it is hospitality and love. And for that to be extended in this sort of this kind of big way is
wow.
Is a blessing, a surprising.
Wow, that's super cool. And I don't think I've read this, but what were you doing before you started your writing career?
Well, when I wrote the Green Ember, I was working in kind of adult education. I was doing sort of like a GED testing, that kind of thing, working with folks who were trying to get their GED and get back to work. It was sort of the goal. So I was doing that. That was my last real job before I started pretending for a living.
Well, that's awesome. I know it's been such a blessing to so many people, including our family. Okay, so I know the Green Ember series, awesome storytelling. So many people love it, but I also know that it's not just about telling a good story. Can you talk about some of the themes that you're trying to work in there? Like what are some of those, deeper, more meaningful concepts that you're trying to communicate to young readers?
Well, so it's funny, because I didn't ever set out to have sort of a mission of like, this is what I'm going to teach, this is what I'm going to smuggle in, this is what I was never intentional like that. We're a very intentional sort of family. We're very much like we're going to do things on purpose. We're going to try to be intent on following the Lord. This is the things we do have meaning. As a storyteller, I think this is both of our philosophies, Josiah and I, but it's certainly been my philosophy that I want to show up to that vocation faithfully, which I think means doing that thing the best way I can.
Right.
And I just say that to describe it as like, I don't know, a lot of people remember David Robinson, or sort of a Christian basketball player. Like that Christian basketball player doesn't glorify God best by, when he dunks the ball, he doesn't, turn around and say Jesus saves or kneel down. The best thing he can do is get back on defense, and try to defend. Like that's the that's the most Christian thing he can do. So as a Christian storyteller, like I feel like my same thing with like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for your kids, doing a cross in the jelly, like does that make it more Christian, or is it just like make a good sandwich, man? And I think it's like make a good sandwich and get back on defense, and tell a good story, because God made the world.
Right.
And if God didn't make the world, and it was like, that if the doctrine of creation wasn't true, then that would be different. But because God did make the world, like it's all His. So making a sandwich is His, getting back on defense is His, farming is His, plumbing is His, storytelling is His. So I didn't ever feel a strong compulsion to be like, oh, this has to be an allegory. This I have to. But so I'll say that's all like a big kind of caveat. I will say that because you write from the overflow of your heart.
Absolutely.
You don't write. I think Tolkien described it as sort of like the stories bubbling up from the leaf mold of the mind, as in like there's all this stuff that grows in a forest, and it kind of grows from this sort of leaf mold. You don't really, it's hard to control that. And actually, the more intentionally you try to like, I'm going to force this square peg through this round hole of storytelling, you kind of get, I think you often get a really clunky storytelling. I'm not saying that's bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It's useful. But I don't know that it is by itself the best storytelling. So I try to be a faithful storyteller. And looking back on it, I think that there are tremendous values that come through, and people resonate with them really deeply. There's this sort of I think throughout the whole thing, and this is because it was true for me. There's this sort of longing for a true new world. There's this longing, and there's this working for. There's this living in light of a reality that's coming, that happens all throughout the Green Ember. And I think that's true because that's who I am. That's where I live. And it's not an allegory. It's not a one-to-one. There, it's not gonna. You're not gonna find exactly the perfect Christ figure. You're gonna find a lot of people who have. I describe it as if you're a non-Christian, you can read this story and not feel like, oh, this guy's trying to sneakily preach at me. But if you're a Christian, when you read it, the bells are going to go off all the time.
Yep.
It's going to be resounding. It's going to be, which I think is true of my favorite kinds of stories, which is Tolkien and even C.S. Lewis, who people often accuse I say accuse because I'm not a big fan of allegory all the time, but they often say that the Chronicles of Narnia are an allegory, but they're not. They're a supposal story. Suppose this, and that's how he described it. Suppose in this world. So it's a little bit different, but the fact is, you're going to have a lot of meaningful, deep kind of connections if you're a Christian parent, and and what I've heard from people is just thousands of conversations that have been sparked because of, oh, what did you think about the way this person reacted? What did you think about how this person, when they did, and it's not all good things. Sometimes it's bad things, but there's I would say that the Green Ember works for Christian families, particularly because the kids just love it as a story, and they're just like, this bow, this guy made this awesome shot with a bow, and they killed the bad guy here, and they won this, or they fought, and it's just adventure. And then the parents, I think, are resonating deeply with this sort of epic undertone that I think echoes reality with a capital R in a way that they are longing for. So I think it kind of works in that sense.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's so funny you say about Tolkien. I was reading the introduction of, it was either The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I think it was The Hobbit, but it was an introduction, and it was a little jarring because he actually addressed this topic about allegory, and he goes, he's like, I'm not a fan of allegory. What I am a fan of is good storytelling. And I was like, really? So this is like very consciously not an allegory.
Yeah.
But your point is so well taken. It's like, it doesn't have to be. Good storytelling can be an awesome ministry in itself, and it can be a huge blessing. And good storytelling, I would say, can be an end in itself. We can enjoy an amazing story just because it's a great story, just sort of like a beautiful piece of music, And but I love that you've also built in all these things out of the overflow of your heart. I mean, that's fantastic. Okay, so you mentioned how just how beneficial this can be for families, which is so true. I wanted to address, Sarah McKenzie mentioned your books on the last podcast, and, she's all about reading aloud to your kids, which I am like totally convinced of how beautiful a thing that is and just how beneficial it is. Did you write these books sort of thinking like, they would be read aloud to kids, or, that kids would just go up to their room and read them, or both? And I don't know, maybe talk about that. What have you heard from families who have read them aloud?
Well, it's funny, Sarah, she, when I first met Sarah, she said, well, I think she was interviewing me the first time we talked, and she said, well, it's obvious you wrote this as a read aloud. Like, it works so well. Oh, really? Because I had no idea about that. Like, no plan. It does work that way, and it's been incredible. That's been the experience of a lot of the audience has been, oh, yeah, we read this aloud. And she's definitely been a big spearhead for that, for sure. And I'm a big fan of what she's doing, and that's had a big impact in our family. But no, I didn't write it as a read aloud. I mean, it was told aloud, so that's where the resonance comes. And I think that maybe that's naturally how I write is a way but I didn't, again, that wasn't intentional. There's a lot of benefits that have come from not necessarily my brilliant calculation, but the Lord just showing up and making something happen. And it's funny going back to what you said about Tolkien. Tolkien describes his. And I think this could be really helpful. That quote, which I think is on fairy stories, if I'm not mistaken, but he says that I cordially dislike allegory, and always,
cordially.
Ever since I was old enough to sort of detect it, he says what people often confuse is allegory and application. He said, and one lies
Yeah.
in the purposeful domination of the reader by the author, and the other lies in the freedom of the reader. And
Interesting.
but application is so powerful. So I think that's what we're
Yeah.
experiencing a lot with some of the best books is there's all this application that's so, I mean, you just read about Aragorn and you're just like, oh, the applications are just massive. But,
Right.
but it's not an allegory, and it's not an attempt, but it does have this sort of resonance with reality.
Yes.
So powerful. And he said, I much prefer history, whether real or feigned. And that's how I
Yes.
feel, like a sort of a feigned history is that's what he masterfully. And but it's about the application, what the readers
Yeah.
experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that the best stories, like you said, you use this word resonate, which is such a great word. But they also, I'd say the best stories really reflect the world in which we live, and they reflect the human condition, and that's why they resonate. We can sort of see ourselves in characters, and we can sense the feelings that different characters would have if they were placed in different positions. And anyway,
They're true. That's what you're describing is a true story. So that's what Tolkien said too. He said the Lord of the Rings is a true story, not that it actually happened, but that it reflects reality. And
yes,
with exactly what you're saying, like that, I want to write true stories, and not that they happen, but that they are honest.
yeah,
And especially when you're talking about kids, to me, that's like so important that you're honest. Like there can be stories that are history books that are untrue, not truthful, because of the way they're framed.
sure,
But
yeah,
you can tell a made up story about a lizard going to get lemonade, and it can be faithful to reality if you're honest,
yeah,
that's so. Tolkien is such a great he's such a great instructor.
yeah. All right, so Josiah, I think that's your next book, A Lizard Who Goes to Get Lemonade.
Absolutely.
So Josiah, let's bring you into this. I love that you guys work together, and man, Josiah, pretty young to be published. That's so fantastic. So talk to us about this new book that you guys have come out with and where it came from. Where did you get the idea for Jack Zulu?
Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key I think readers of the Green Ember will still enjoy it because it's got the same voice and the same, I think, heart as the Green Ember does, but it's an entirely different world. It's more based in our reality and sort of like a rural Americana take on like a fantasy story, maybe in the tradition of Tolkien or Lewis.
Mm-hmm. Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Somewhere in my brain. I don't know how. But a few years back, I was 13. I started dreaming up this world as a TV series. And so I kind of sketched out a plan for seasons and episodes and things like that. And I would talk with Dad about it. And eventually he kind of came to me and pitched, like, what if we co-wrote this as a novel? That might be a better shot at going to the screen. So that's kind of where we're at right now is on the other side of that idea.
Excellent. That's really cool. Okay, so tell us about Jack Zulu. Who is he, and who are some of the characters that he runs into? Give us maybe a quick overview with no spoilers, but just of the plot.
Yeah. Okay. So Jack is a 12-year-old boy living in a rural West Virginia town, and his dad is from South Africa and his mother is from rural West Virginia. So he's already kind of caught between these two worlds, just ethnically even. And then the story kind of picks up when Jack discovers a key that sort of unlocks this magic portal to 12 different worlds. And so the story is kind of him discovering where he truly belongs as he's kind of caught in between these worlds.
Gotcha. Okay, excellent. So one of the themes in your book that I wanted you to talk about, either one of you, that I think is just awesome, is this idea of mentoring. I know that Jack's got a librarian sort of mentor friend. Can you talk about that and maybe some of the concepts that you're trying to communicate to young readers?
I mean, my side of that is very much on the sort of story math like equation. So kind of back to what Dad was talking about trying to just craft the best story possible. That has a storytelling function. I think in the book, I think in a lot of stories a sort of a place for a surrogate father figure, and so Jack is a fatherless child, and he's kind of longing to have this mentor, like you said, and so this character, Mr. Wheeler, kind of fills that role and guides him as a wizard does throughout the story.
And so many stories that we love and resonate with us because a lot of stories are about fatherhood, and I think that's partly because we have this sort of deep longing for fatherhood, and there's so many of the problems in the world, which is kind of considering our situation, but like are about fathers and sons, and there's just there's a lot of father hunger. There's a deep hunger
Sure.
for that. And so that's a lot of, some of the stories we love, like the Karate Kid is, is a big influential story for us, which is a really wonderful story. But it's about a fatherless boy finding a father, and there's so many stories that are like that. And I think that comports with reality in a deep way. And so that mentorship is really central. It's really central to the Green Ember. It's actually kind of what the Green Ember is about in one sense. It's about our main character Pickett sort of being in conflict over which mentor, which father to follow.
Yeah.
And he could follow sort of there's different options there, and that's what it's a lot about. And so this one is too. And I think that's at the core of a lot of stories, because I think it's at the core of a lot of our experience. We're all longing for that. I know certainly as men, we long for that. And I think that the women do too, and need older women. Apostle Paul talks about that. And I think we all need that. There's a reason why the church is described as a family, and that elders and fathers, we have that, brothers and sisters. It's a very familial terms, because that's sort of the root of our experience in the real world. So I think the story really definitely reflects that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's so cool. Okay, so I would love to hear just sort of peek behind the curtain, like what is it like to work together, and how does that even work? Does somebody do a rough draft, or do you do different parts of the story and put it together like two authors? How does that work?
We just fight.
We just duke it out.
Whoever
arm wrestles the best.
I could see somebody saying, "Wait, you had him doing this? I had him doing that."
We've had a couple of those discussions. Thankfully, not a whole lot. Typically, our relationship with this story has been mostly the story side is from me. So I'll kind of give Dad a basic plot outline and sort of character descriptions and things like that, and then let him just run with the story, and then Dad will execute the actual like writing, pen to paper kind of stuff. But it's all back and forth.
It's back and forth, and he ends up doing a lot more. He ends up doing a lot more writing than I did. But I'd say the finished product is probably refined mostly by me, because I think I'm stronger in that area. But his story skills are incredible, and he's put in so much, probably a lot more time on this story than I have, and developed it. So it was awesome for me. Like, it was, because I've had a lot of experience doing this on my own, and it's, you can have sort of co-writing things that are like, oh, this would just have been easier if I just did it myself, and that's not very hard to imagine. But man, with him, it's just like, it just feels like you're going into a fight, and like you're a bunch of guys over there, and you're like, okay, how am I gonna? And then like a really tough dude just comes up beside you and is like, I've got your back. Like, that's how this felt to me.
That's cool.
He's got so much, and honestly, he's helped me a lot with even my Green Ember books. Like, we've spent a lot of time over the last few years, especially talking through some of the story problems and opportunities that we have. And he's got a really good sense for that, really good instincts, and he's an excellent storyteller. So it's really, we had a good time doing it. Like, we didn't, I was worried that there'd be a lot of, an opportunity for we didn't have a huge amount of conflict in our lives before, normal dad and son stuff. But I was kind of concerned, like, oh, is this the thing that's going to like drive us apart? And I feel like it's been the opposite.
Wow.
Really fun experience.
We have the same vision for the story. We both want what's best for the story. So anytime we conflict, I think it's for the good of the story,
Yeah, man, that's great. Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, you kind of already touched on it, Sam, but just what's it like to have your son step up and, I don't know, just see him flourish in this way? Like, what a cool moment as a dad. I don't, that's not a question, I guess. That's just sort of a prompt.
No, I'm with you. It's fun because it's cool. Writing the Green Ember stuff, like there's lots of different satisfactions with it. Like, there's the sort of like, oh, I feel like I wrote something that I kind of said what I wanted to say. And then there's like the response from the audience, like, oh, they loved it and it served them. So that there's different satisfactions. And I've, I hope that to experience that with Jack Zulu too, on the audience side. We're starting to some degree now, but like on the creation side, it's just it's so satisfying, because it's like, I feel like I've got this sort of ringer co-author with me that's really good. And so that's fun. Like that's just fun in itself. And it's like, oh, it's my son too. And I'm really proud of him. And I'm proud of him for what he did in this, in creating this, co-creating this book. But I'm also like just proud of who he is. Like, because some of those character things, because that whole, like even what he just alluded to, sort of like the best idea wins. Those ideas that are so central to collaboration, because it was his idea originally, he could have like a real sort of possessive, like, no, you can't change this. What do you? But he didn't have that. He has a very professional, like much more professional than I had as when I was starting my career, approach to like, let's let the, okay, oh, that's a good idea, and if I come to him and say, I think this is kind of weak, he's like, yeah, okay. He's immediately like, how do we solve the problem? It's not like pride is wounded and you. So the honestly, the humility on display and the kind of man he has shown himself to be, I think, throughout this project has been the most satisfying thing to me, because before my vocation as a storyteller or my professional career, like I'm a father, and that's the first sort of province of my stewardship, which involves providing for the family, which is my work. So it's very tangled, but as a dad, I feel like that's been the most satisfying thing, and not just what he's created or co-created. It's like what the kind of man he's becoming, which excites me, because this isn't it. Jack Zulu is the beginning. It's not the end. It's like, oh, we accomplished this cool thing. That's true. But I'm excited about what he's going to do in the rest of the series, but also the rest of his life and career, not just in the arts, but just as someone following Jesus, because that's the most important thing, that by far is who he and I are becoming as characters in the story that God is telling in the world. Much more important than what we put on paper.
Wow, man, that's amazing. So profound. I love that. You're bringing to memory a moment about, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. My son is 13 now, and he had some creative writing assignment, and it was, I mean, he just goes nuts. That's where he loves writing. He's really good at it. And I was reading this story from like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, and I put it down, and I couldn't speak. I was like, I couldn't have done 1/10 of that at his age,
Yeah.
And so I'm reading this, and I'm like, this is such a gift from the Lord. It's so obvious in it. Josiah, you have that obviously, and I can tell how proud your dad is, and that's just an amazing, amazing, beautiful thing. Okay, so you talked a little bit about family and the father-son relationship. I would love to just know about the Smith family. What do you guys do? What makes you tick? What kind of, you mentioned about being intentional. We love that. We're all about, I almost called this whole podcast Intentional Families. We ended up going with Strategic Families, but I would just love to know the things that you guys do to sort of solidify your family unit, be on mission for the Lord. What does that look like?
Just watch TV all the time.
Yeah, a lot of TV. We'll sometimes mix it up, play a little video game.
Yeah, we try to.
No, I mean, Gina and I had some pretty, it's like anything when you're starting out, and you think we had a lot of fire. I'm a big idea guy. I think you and I are probably a lot alike. I care about
Sure.
thinking through things, and I'm a real like vision person, and so we have a big vision for what we do in our family. And of course, the reality comes crashing down. The humbling reality comes and gets you, like, oh, maybe I didn't know as much, but I think we always were trying. We're always like trying to go for things. We were when I coach soccer, I always tell the kids, like, if you're mistakes are fine, but let's make mistakes of action instead of inaction. Let's go commit a foul. A foul is fine. I love a foul. Foul is great. Missing a goal, that's awesome. Like, I'll go crazy if you miss a goal. That's like the greatest thing in the world. But like not going into the tackle, standing back, holding off. What the mistakes of inaction are inexcusable. Inexcusable. You're 6-year-old.
Yeah.
But so I think we've made a lot of mistakes, but I feel like mostly we made mistakes of action, and I regret more inaction than I do. I regret more being paralyzed by fear than I do by making a mistake of sincerely trying to do something before the Lord. So we've done a lot of those, but I think, I mean, just been intentional. We're Bible people. The heart of our home is devotion to Jesus Christ. And that's what our life is about. And our life is about anticipating the kingdom of God coming and living in light of those values now, and living in light of who that is. And so Jesus is king. And so we're not waiting for that for us to like start obeying him at some point, or maybe his kingdom is coming, but he is king now, and his kingdom. So that's the beating heart of our family. I hope that's certainly our aim. So being faithful at church, being faithful involved in worship, and at different times we've been more or less successful at doing sort of like family devotional practices, and we've kind of like every family, we've not always hit a home run there, but sometimes we've had some stand-up doubles.
Honestly,
in a different.
I love the analogy.
What sports metaphors here. But yeah, I think our Gina and I, our family, sort of our practices related to kids, I think the thing that sticks in my mind is that I think we've been big about big discipline. Well, let me go back a little bit and just say that I'm a vision person. Gina is very much an execution person. She loves to execute people. Yep. So the guillotine is strong. We skipped spanking and went straight to a capital. We have a lot more. Yeah. But no, she is she's a doer. Like she's okay, what's the plan? Let's go. And so she's she works. She's not afraid to work hard, and so that's been good. Because she's homeschooling, she's shaped a lot of our family, like intentionality of our family.
Yeah.
But I think an underlying philosophy has been like big love, big discipline. And that's that they go together, sort of like that accountability of the discipline of the boundaries is going to be there. Like you are loved enough to have a fence. Like you are loved enough that you cannot run into there are consequences. The consequences for me is not punishment, as in like you are morally evil, therefore you will be punished, and that will set the scales right. But more of we're on this road, walking this road together, and you're going off into this, and actually we need to correct, so we need to come back. So it's correction, it's discipline, it's from an insider. It's not a judicial sort of a thing for us. It's a family terms, and so thinking of correction, but not. A lot of people talk about like I'm a graceful parent or whatever, and sometimes it means like I'm not parenting.
Or laissez-faire, yeah, right.
Yeah. We're not libertarians when it comes to parenting. There is a mom and a dad, and there is authority, and there is accountability, and G.K. Chesterton talks about orthodoxy as being it's a fence. It's a fence, but it's a fence around a playground. And that's how I think about Christianity. Christianity is this it's this garden of yes. I mean, it's a garden of yes and a tree of no. It's not a garden of no and a tree of yes. So it's a lot of yeses, and that yeses is the big love part. It's that there has to be a lot of love. I mean, if you come in our home, we do a lot of things wrong, for sure. But there is a lot of love. There's affection. There's physical affection. You're going to get a hug. You're going to get hugged by your dad, definitely multiple times a day. There's hugs, and I love it. And I partly probably because I need it because it's that's who we are. But you're going to be loved, and you're going to know where you belong. You're not going to wonder how my dad feels about it, how's my mom feel about it. You're going to know. But you're also there's going to be the boundary. You're going to have there will be consequences. There will be correction. There will be, but that will be hopefully when we're doing it right with the big context of love. So I don't know. I'm not a parenting expert, and the longer we've gone, the less of an expert I feel. That's not because our kids are terrible or anything. It's just like, wow, life is just like it has a way of humbling you for sure. And I used to know a lot more, that whole old cliches. I used to be much more of a parenting expert when we had younger kids.
Yeah.
But it's still, the whole thing's been pretty cool to me. I love being a dad of sons. I love being a dad of daughters. And so it's been awesome. And I'm not super looking forward to it being like, over that next phase. We'll show up to whatever God gives us in whatever phase of life. But I'm like, I want the kids. I want them at home. And but I more than that want them to say yes to the story that Jesus is writing in their lives. That's a little bit of a picture into sort of our family life. I hope that's accurate. I hope that's fair. But we've needed our oldest daughter is named Aletha Ann Smith, and her name is Aletha is from the Greek word for aletheia, for truth, and Ann is sort of a derivative of Hannah, which means full of grace. So her name is full of grace and truth, and that's been family like goal. That's who we want. That was aspirational. So we've always been trying to do that. People who really love truth, who care about truth and hold it really tightly, but also are defined by grace, like the Lord Jesus. The law came from Moses, so grace and truth came through Jesus. So that's been like a very central sort of idea for us. Not that we've always hit it, but that that's been our aim. And I think with the Lord's been very, very, very kind to us so far. So everything we've received has been as a result of the incredible truth of His grace.
That's beautiful. You reminded me of a quote I heard. I can't remember who it was, but he said, "Before I had kids, I had 6 theories on how to raise kids, and then I had 6 kids and 0 theories on how to raise kids."
Have you heard the one about that? My dad used to do the one that was like the pastor who first starts off at the church, in his early career. He just gets married and he's got like 99 foolproof plans to say, to have a perfect family.
Yeah.
He has a couple of kids and he's like 25 laws of and eventually, after years, it's like 2 helpful suggestions for
That's great. I haven't heard that. I love it. Well, no, that's wow. I want to come over to the Smith family. We might just show up at your door one day and see what's for dinner. No.
Come on over. I'll treat you like one of the kids. You'll get a hug, but then you'll be immediately corrected.
Hey, I'm a hugger. Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth. Well, Josiah, let me pose that to you. What's it like to be in the Smith family? Your dad just talked about some amazing stuff. Tell me what it's like growing up in the household.
What's the reality here?
No, just corroborate everything he said.
It's a solid 6 out of 10, I would say. I'm kidding.
Recommend with caveats.
Yeah, with caveats. No, I love it. I've enjoyed growing up a lot. That sounds kind of dumb to say, but it's true. I like our family culture of humor a lot. Like we're all kind of goofy and we enjoy. I think that can be a vice just as much as it's a virtue for us, for our family. But we all are kind of on the same page as far as humor goes. So there's a lot of, and this happens with every family, but there's a lot of like little inside jokes and bits that'll develop over time. And it's a fun place to be. I enjoy it.
Yeah. That's awesome. It sounds like you guys have an amazing thing going, all built on the Lord, which is so awesome. So I'd love to know, Sam, as you and Gina think about your parenting, what are some scriptures that you're like, man, that's foundational for our family or for our parenting?
We just try to base it on the whole Bible. Like pick out one little. I think about that. I mean, it's funny with young people. You think about the Proverbs. I've always been a big like wisdom literature kind of person. Ecclesiastes is my favorite book of the Bible. I think there's so much value in life there. So there's portions of Ecclesiastes chapter 11 towards the end when he's talking about light is sweet, it pleases the eyes to see the sun. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. But then remember the days of darkness will be many. Banish anxiety from your heart, for youth and vigor are meaningless, or youth in the dawn of life are meaningless or fleeting. They're fleeting. Remember your creator when you're young. Like those kinds of things, that's powerful to me. I don't know if we have a particular like passage. There's one that I think about, I'm trying to memorize recently, but I'm going to read it in case I fail. But in James, he says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls." So that's the one I've been thinking about recently a lot. And that feels, I don't know if that's like, that's what we anchored our whole life on. I think if we're talking about anchoring our whole life, it would be that passage about the law coming through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ, and the glory of the Gospels. That figuring out how to walk in love, walk in Jesus' way of love. I think about our life together as walking a path. And that feels like the vision from Deuteronomy, where while you're walking along the way, like this, like in the routine of your life, as you are going, and that's sort of our goal is not necessarily to I'm a father and he's a son. but we're also brothers, like in the long term kind of a thing, so that our goal is not to remain exactly as we are forever, that there's this transition coming where we're all sort of in relationship with Jesus Christ, and that so that I'm not that goes back to that sort of like, am I an authority? That yes, but I'm also like, I'm not the main authority. I'm also not. I'm a provider. Yes. Am I the provider? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Am I a shepherd? Yes. Am I sort of a spiritual mentor? Yes. Am I the? So everything about this is why I love, like, that's so important for us, like why church is so important, because I know a lot of families who are very intentional almost become little replacements for the body of Christ, and like they become their own little church, their own little denomination almost. And I feel like in our family, I want very much for our kids to be connected to Jesus Christ as the chief shepherd. And so I want them to actually know that there are probably some different ways that gets expressed. And I'm a missionary kid, so I've seen that what it looks like in Africa. It's a little different than rural West Virginia. And so for them to be connected to Jesus, that he's their shepherd, that he's their provider.
Yeah.
So, and if they need to disagree with me at some point in life and follow Jesus, then they should.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the arbiter of what that is. And actually they have other authorities in their life. Their pastor has this unique role that's different than my role. And so, we can get a little idol worshipy about the family, I think, because it's such a good thing that we kind of turn it into an ultimate thing. And it's part of it's, but I think it fits in. It couldn't have more value because it's invented by God and it's created by God, but it fits into this whole culture and ecosystem that he created that's about him. So I want our kids to be like tapped into that, which is more than just like, hey, here's the weird way that we believe about everything, which we've got that for sure. But like, here's the stream, here's the life. We've got this bucket over here that's got water. It's water. We can drink it. We can wash it. It's great.
Yeah.
But come on to the stream, man, because that's where it is.
Yeah, I love it. I've got this vision of like a tributary to a greater river. Like our families, may our families be tributaries of life into the great river of life in Jesus Christ. I love it. That's so beautifully put. As we close, I'm sure there are going to be people who think like, man, where can I get these books? I want to check out Green Ember and Jack Zulu. Where can they buy these books? And then how can they best follow you guys?
So you can order the Green Ember and Jack Zulu at sdsmith.com/store.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Got it right for once.
Great. How about like social media and that kind of thing? Are there places that are best to follow you guys there?
Yeah, you can connect with us both on Instagram, and I believe you're on Facebook and Twitter, I guess.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can find it all at sdsmith.com or jackzulu.com. I think that's got your stuff in there.
Yeah.
Or it should pretty soon.
And JosiahCSmith.com too.
Josiah C. Smith?
Oh, JosiahCSmith.com. All right. Great. Well, guys, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much for your time. I encourage everybody, everybody listening, we talk about being strategic families. I see your books as a hugely strategic thing to do because, the storytelling is amazing, but all the concepts that you guys are getting into and ways that we can just encourage our kids to be the young men and young women that God has called them to be. It's an awesome, awesome ministry, and you do it with excellence. So thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Graham. It has been so cool being with you today. A super encouraging time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, Josiah, thank you guys so much. So cool that you get to work together and that you're using the gift of storytelling to honor the Lord. May the Lord continue to work through you and bring hope and encouragement and joy to millions. It was awesome to get to spend time with you guys, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with all of us. All right, so my song recommendation this week is from a group you may or may not have heard of, a husband-wife combo called the Grey Havens. They have a song that is just so cool. It's called If the Walls Move. Some of it is in a 7/8 time signature and seems to use major sevenths, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, getting a little dorky with the music theory there, but both of those things give the song some street cred in my mind, and it's a beautiful song. So check it out, and of course, play it loudly for your kids. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.